have this.
Oh,
uh,
oh, sorry.
I'd rather change my setup so that. Okay, well, we just had a little introduction to acorns in that Anglo-Saxon class. So we have the evidence that there were acorns there in Anglo-Saxon times. Anyway, introducing myself, I am Robin Houts Mundanely, Kawena Cornovi in the SCA, and this presentation is Eat the Acorns. So not so much about, well, the point is that we can eat them and what we need to do to get to that point where we are eating the acorns again. So just a little bit about me before we get into it. I've had a couple of different careers, first as a biochemist and then as an anthropology professor. And mixed in there, we have had a herd of alpacas, so I have become an alpaca judge as well. So just a few things about me before we get started. Okay, so so what is an acorn? Well, and the older acorn, acorn, these are the ancient words for acorns. It hasn't changed very much. So does everyone know the oak landscape? Do we have any people from foreign places here?
Yeah. Well, back in Italy, I've definitely from places that have oak forests.
Ah, yes, definitely, definitely. Okay, so I think everyone's familiar with oaks. I'm the only one who wasn't. So I grew up in Australia. I was born and raised in Australia, and there are no oaks there. So oaks are native to the Northern Hemisphere. So when I arrived in the United Kingdom as a 20-something-year-old, that was a new landscape to me. And the oak landscape is very different to a eucalyptus landscape, which is what Australia is. So anyway, the nut of the oak, that's what an acorn is. So we have genus, most of them are in genus Quercus and in the family Fagaceae. And there are over 500 species of oaks. There's a lot of them. But if you can imagine it, there's actually over 700 species of eucalyptus just in Australia. So the oaks are not the only ones that have proliferated into many different species. So just briefly, the anatomy of the oak. We're all familiar with the acorn, the fleshy part of it, and then we have this cupule. We have our little cups that, or hats, or whatever people call them, that go on the top. So those are the parts of the oak that we're most familiar with, and the rest of this in here, the seed coat, the tester is that sort of orangey brown in there. That's the covering that's actually on the nut. And then we have the pericarp, which is the part that we do have to crack off if we're going to ever eat an acorn. So that's just a little bit about the acorns. And we actually only have, I live in the eastern foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains. So we're at the very, very south end of Santa Clara County. And in this particular location, we have only two of the species of oak. We have Quercus lobata, which is a deciduous oak, and we have Quercus agrifolia, which is the coastal live oak, which is an evergreen. And a little higher up, we get into the blue oaks. But for me, right here, and we live out in the county on a farm, these are the two that we have here. But I've got a cover of a book there, Types of Acorns, Identification Guide for Oaks by Acorns. And if you know your acorns, you can know what tree it came from because they're all very recognizable, all 500 of them. So I mentioned that they're native to the northern hemisphere. So this was some interesting work that just described where all the different oaks are. And there's two hotspots, it turns out. So the two hotspots are in southern China, Yunnan province, but the other hotspot is in Mexico. And there are something like over 200 species of oak that in the both of these areas, just over 200. So we are very close. This is me up here in middle California. And we have a lot of oaks, and we have oak woodlands here, where the oaks are on the slopes of the mountains. So around the Bay Area, we have coastal mountains, and the oak woodlands are generally on the slopes of those mountains that run up and down North America. So they give way to the pines, to the alpine climate and trees as it gets further up into the Sierra Nevada. And there's that big gap in the middle of California that we call the San Joaquin Valley or the Valley. So that was a wetland and a swamp and a lake before that in ancient Pleistocene times. And there are not that many oaks that grow in that section of my part of the world. But Italy's there's oaks. So all of Europe is basically dominated by this oak landscape. Okay. And I do not have chat up, so you'll need to help me if we have any questions on as we go through. Otherwise, I'm planning to have time at the end for questions. So I read something recently that basically we were all eating acorns from about 10,000, or before that, until about 10,000 years ago. We were all eating acorns until about 10,000 years ago. But our palates and our food, of course, has changed a little bit since then. But these were two of the early sites that I found references to. So this one on this side here, this is the Gesher Beno Yaakov Paleolithic Arculian site in the Dead Sea Rift. So this is now in modern Israel, but it is the Rift Valley. So if you're familiar with the Rift Valley, that's the one that's where the Leakeys were working down in Africa. So that Rift Valley comes right up through Africa, but that comes right up through the Levant, through the Middle East there. So this is on the out of Africa route. So we have evidence of acorn consumption at that site, and that site dates to 750,000 BCE, before Common Era. And then it's about 100 miles sort of to the southeast to get down to the Carmel Range. And that's where this Kebara site is, again in Israel, but in the Carmel. Think of Carmel, Mount of Olives, Carmel Range coming out in sort of in the middle of Israel there. And that is a Neanderthal. Well, it's a cave that has been re-inhabited many times. But this particular layer was a Neanderthal occupation where they found evidence of acorn consumption. So we've been eating them for a really long time. So I first presented this paper at the Southwest Anthropology Associated meeting several years ago, and it was in Southern California. So I thought, oh, I'll have a quick look and see something that represents the acorn use in the particular area where we were. And this is an additional land acknowledgement. So this was in the area where the Ahachaman of the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians is, the Ahachaman Nation. And the tribal chair was recorded as saying that they used to eat it as mush, like a cream of wheat or malta meal, and it would be served hot with every meal. So the picture is of the bedrock mortars. So the bedrock mortars are, it's like we probably most of us have a mortar in our kitchen, a mortar and pestle. So that's one that we can take around our kitchen or take to an event or do things with. But the bedrock mortars are the same thing, but they are in the rock that is bedded in the ground. So these are bedrock mortars. And although other things could be ground in mortars, these are primarily for grinding acorns. And the number of these that are up and down California gives you a very, a very real feel for just how much acorn meal and was being ground for consumption before our lovely Europeans arrived here. So another one here on the other side is one that I'm very familiar with. I mentioned that we live in Santa Clara County, and at the end of our road is a very significant Native American site called Chitaktak. And that has, it's a little Santa Clara County park, and they actually have programs there for the public. And not just any public, they have about 3,000 students a year come to that site for the program. So it's a pretty significant program that they've got going there. So in that little park that is now a Santa Clara Park, there are about 50 of these bedrock mortars. And one of those, about one would feed a family. So one mortar can be used by someone to grind acorns daily, and one can produce about enough for a family. But when I looked in the archaeological records for the area, that park only covers a very small amount of that site. There's a much bigger extended habitation area. And there are in fact over 500 bedrock mortars just in that one extended habitation area. So that was a hugely important site to have the capability of grinding that much acorn, even if it was only for their big times where they would get together, but just something that is just capable of a huge amount of production of acorn meal. So understanding a little bit more about all these 500 species of acorns, because ours, the Quercus agrifolia is in what is shown as the red grouping, and the Quercus lobata is in the white grouping. And this is really just a way of as humans, we need to describe things. So this red and white, there's actually quite a bit of overlap in some of the types of things they're talking about. But generally, that's what we do with oaks. We divide them into this red and white group. And the important thing for our consideration today is on this side, on the right-hand side of this table, and I can't see it on my screen at the moment, but this is from you can see the name of the book and the author at the top of the page. Oh, there it goes. Nature's Garden by Samuel Thayer. So he has this is an excellent book. So what I wanted you to focus on here is this overlap of tannins, because I think we just heard previously described that you can't eat acorns because of the tannins in them. So we can eat acorns, but we have to take the tannins out because the tannins are very bitter. Although we especially add tannins back into our wines, and of course we all drink tea. And so we definitely have tannins and appreciate the the complexity that tannins bring to various foods. But in terms of the amount that is in an acorn, it's pretty significant. In that top one, those top numbers are 20.3% and a 19.6%. That's for Quercus agrifolia, which is one of the evergreen that we have in this area growing. And you can see that it's around 20% tannin. And this is a huge amount of tannin that you need to try and get out of your acorn before it becomes sweet and edible. And although generally, well, there was one standout there, is Quercus douglasii I at 31%, but generally the white oaks are considered to have lower tannin levels than the uh, the group of red oaks. So when we're thinking about trying to get back to eating acorns, it's important to get to know whatever acorns are in your area. So I have lived here on this farm for uh, over 30 years. So over that time, I have had time to intimately get to know the oak trees in our area. So I'm very familiar what they look like. I'm very familiar with the type of pattern of the mast cropping. I don't know if mast was mentioned anywhere in, yeah, someone talked about turning out the pigs to feed on the mast, M-A-S-T. So this is also something that is a little bit different about different oaks, but it's about the oaks in general. They have this method of reproduction called mast reproduction. And it's also just called mast. I mean, the overproduction, which is mast, also has that name as a noun. So what happens is this is a smart thing for an oak tree to do, because there are many animals and birds, birds being animals as well, but many mammals and many birds that like acorns. Humans are not the only ones who have made use of eating acorns over the years. So uh, the the strategy for the oak tree is that by having occasional overproduction or mast years, they can overwhelm the number of animals that are eating them up. And there's only something like 1 in 1 million acorns ever actually gets to grow into an oak tree. So hopefully on that 1 year that it produces so many acorns, that's the year that one of those little acorns gets to grow up and turn into an oak tree. So this year, just as an example, and it wasn't all of the Quercus lobata, but only a couple of them had a mast year. So that's where I was gathering this year, was under those couple of trees. So last year, I still have sitting on the table here, I think I gathered 5 of the Quercus lobata acorns last year. So that was not their production year, but it was a production year for some of our Quercus agrifolia, the coastal live oak. So that was the year for them to have a mast crop. So this is an unusual strategy, looking from nature to survive, but that's the way that's the way the oak trees do it. So in terms of, excuse me, human consumption, uh, for people who are relying on acorns for their everyday food, it's very important that they have some way to store them, because when you're dealing with a crop and you're dealing with your basic food supply, and it's not very reliable from 1 year to the next, you need to be able to store so that you can reach into those stores on the years when there is very little production. And this is still, excuse me, This is still a mystery as far as the science of it goes. We do not yet understand what prompts a mast year or a non-mast year in the oak tree world. So if you can manage to store your acorns adequately, they can last up to 10 years, apparently. I've never stored any for that long. So, but I think I might put some of the ones that I have aside already and see how long I can store them and still have still have them usable and edible. Okay, any questions on all that? No? Okay. So,
Sorry, quick question.
mhm.
Um, are they gonna be stored before curing or after? Like before you process them to take out the tannins or after?
uh, I don't actually know because I haven't stored them that long, but from the information that I have gleaned for storing the acorns, uh, the Quercus lobata that we have here, which are in the white group, have a lot more moisture. And I've found that for stability, I have to dry them for almost 4 hours at around 200 Fahrenheit in the oven, because otherwise they go moldy very, very quickly. And it could be to do with the level of the tannins as well as the amount of moisture. Uh, so that's those ones. The Quercus agrifolia, I only dry for about 2 hours, and I have never had a problem with them molding. So I think the amount of time that you can store the acorns for probably has to do with what acorn you're storing, but I don't have enough data to really give you a full answer on that one. Um, I have never heard of acorns being stored anyhow except in their natural state. So I have heard of them being, if people are, some people, tribes, have to travel a long way to get their acorns, I have heard of them actually cracking that pericarp off because it's a lot of extra weight and it's not the part that you're eating. But the usually, if you're storing for long periods, you will want to keep them basically intact because that gives you air circulation. And when they're dried, they can just be dried in the sun or a solar oven or however you want to dry them. But you dry them to the point that when you shake them, you can actually hear the nut rattling inside. So that's sort of the indication that they have dried enough that they will be okay for storage. So that's just a sort of a guideline for how you gauge whether they're ready to be stored or not. Now we have we have refrigerators and freezers. So some acorn meal that I did prepare a couple of years ago, I still have in my freezer and it's still wet. No, I mixed it and I'll talk about the leaching in a little while. But that was already leached. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do with it now? Because I'm not ready to use it. And I want some available for making acorn bread for the West Coast Culinary Symposium. So I just put it in my freezer. But that's not what would have been done until very recently. People didn't have a way to freeze down their acorn meal. Is that enough of an answer for that? Okay. So a couple of hundred years ago, the some people who were still eating acorns stopped, and this has been linked very clearly to colonization. Now there are parts of the world where people have never stopped eating acorns, and one of those parts of the world is the Korean Peninsula. And Dotorimok has been made there continuously, probably as long as people have lived in the Korean Peninsula, because we were all eating acorns. So they still eat acorn. It's a little bit like tofu, but it's made with acorns. And it's been interesting actually. If there are very few places that you can actually purchase acorn meal already commercially prepared or prepared. I don't know about commercially, but one of them would be to look in if you have a Korean market anywhere within your reach. That would be a place that you are likely to find some acorn meal if you want to actually try it and see what you can do with it before you branch out and think about making your own acorn meal. So, one of the acorn products that I came across when I was doing the research for this paper was this oatmeal acorn initiative on the island of Kia. And I recently watched a couple of videos of this group. It's one woman in particular. They're on YouTube. If you want to have a look at them, there's some very series of short videos that talk about and show the way they're collecting acorns. And there's a particular, oh, I didn't write it here. There's a particular oak. There's only one on that island. So all the oak trees on that island are the same one. And apparently, historically, they had a market. This is before the Second World War. They had a market for the acorn caps, and they were used in Europe uh, for tanning leather. And it's a particularly desirable tannin to tan leather with. It gives a very soft finish, but apparently it also takes embossing very well. So for luxury items that are going to be embossed with gold, it takes that embossing very well. So that market kind of disappeared, but after the Second World War, but they have been able to find some artisans who are tanning artisanally, and they have been able to reintroduce since they're collecting the acorns, they have been able to supply the acorn caps again for the tanning. But some years, the numbers are amazing. And I'm just doing a small collection on my own property. But some years they have collected between 1 and 2 tons of acorns, just this one outfit. And they are making energy bars, they are making acorn cookies, they're going to the big fair in Paris, the food, emerging foods. So they're definitely making an impact on the world that we can once again bring acorns back onto our tables. When this oatmeal acorn initiative was getting started, they actually had some people who had lived through the war. Uh, they were collecting stories from some of these people, and they were stories of shame that they had had to resort to eating acorns because they didn't have enough food during the war. So we need to move past that. It's not shameful to eat the acorns. But that colonization, of course, is what happened in North America and, well, in the Americas, uh, because colonization from the European invaders uh, interrupted their foodways tremendously. And here in California, people were basically not allowed after the mission system was disbanded. People never got to go back onto their lands. So their foodways and their lifeways were completely interrupted. So they don't eat acorns anymore. They were not able to eat acorns. So just a little visual here. This is actually on our property. These two very large oaks grow right down the back. And the one on the left is the evergreen. This is a winter scene. We're very brown and dry in the summer, so if you can see green, it's definitely winter. So on the left here, we have a Quercus agrifolia. That one's it's probably 80 or 90 feet high by now, and it grew up from a fairly small tree just over the time that we've lived here. And then the one here on the right is the deciduous one, the Quercus lobata. And this one is about 120 feet tall. And I measured its girth a couple of years ago. It's 15 foot two around the bottom there. These are bales for our archery range. There's another one out here at the 40-yard line. So we have for many years hosted an archery practice for the SCA right here under our oak trees. This is this is the leaf. This one is the Quercus agrifolia, and these are the catkins. So this is what appears in the spring with all the pollens, and pretty soon you start to see the little tiny acorns getting started. Hmm. So this is just another visual. This is a tray of the very recognizable uh, Quercus agrifolia. So this one's smaller. It's the acorns are probably inch and a quarter to an inch and a half. And oh, there's you can see a little one with its cap. It's one little cap survived here. Um, this is a pretty typical tray. And 2 weeks ago, I actually dropped off another 20 pounds of prepared acorns over at Chautauqua for the programs for the children. I've been supplying the acorns for that program for a number of years because the kids actually get to pound a couple of acorns themselves and pretend they're making their own acorn meal for eating. So these are stripy, these ones, and they're pointy. So as far as acorns go, they these are on the stripy and pointy side. So looking at these acorns, you can see that there are some little holes. These are probably acorns that I should not have included because they have little grubs in them. And although you can eat the grubs, I did see a little a little movie from that the Kea Acorn Initiative where they disturbed the acorns and all the little white grubs came out, and then they put them all in a saucepan of sizzling butter and said they were all very nice. But I haven't done that myself yet. I've been concentrating on eating the acorns instead of the grubs. So anyway, here's a bunch of acorns, and as I'm collecting, it's only really worth collecting the perfect acorns because those are the ones that are going to keep. And any of them that have got grubs are likely to just be contaminated and to go bad, to go moldy. So you really don't want to add those to your stash. And there are so many animals that live off of acorns. The deer come and eat them. Oh my goodness, the squirrels absolutely love them. And they get to feast for months because they're willing to go out to the tiny little ends of the branches and get their acorn snacks. And for most of these animals, the fact that acorns have tannin is not an issue. It's built into the system. They evolved with acorns and they can eat them straight. Okay, so that's whoops. Ah, my finger's too fast. So a little bit about collecting and preparing the acorns. The picture on the upper left here, this is showing the actual meats. So these have been dried and the outside has been the hard outside has been hammered. Oh, I usually use a hammer and just crack them open. It's pretty easy. And so those are the meats ready for preparation. And then down here is the meal. So that's being ground up. Excuse me. So somehow we need to get this tannin out. As soon as we've got the tannin out, then we're good to go. It's just another flour. It's just another nut. So the idea is to, by grinding it, you're actually increasing the surface area exponentially. So it's a faster process. It is possible, particularly with the lower oak, lower tannin acorns, to actually do that leaching. We call this leaching, where the water and tannins are water soluble. So you're just using water to soak out the tannins from the nut. So I have read that it's possible to just, this was a very old technique, to actually put them in some sort of a mesh, leave them in a stream, and you might come back next year and you will have leached acorns in that stream as long as nothing else has found them or eaten them. But generally, we and the all those bedrock mortars are indicative that the native people around here were grinding the acorns into meal and then leaching it, because it is then a much faster process. So this here is that acorn meal in a bowl, and then I have a sock here, and this is it running it's just running in the tap. So I just left it for several hours running. And I did that because the very first time I ever actually got to eat acorn mush, it's like a porridge, we had someone, because I've been volunteering down at the Chautauqua site for about 30 years. And we had someone come from the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History, and he had prepared the acorn meal and he said he got one of his wife's stockings and he had run it under the tap overnight and then brought it to Chautauqua, and we cooked it with hot rocks in a basket. So that was the way they were cooking it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try that method as well. I've also done the changing the water in in a bucket, just loose. So burn the meal and uh, put it in as if you were making cheese. So I've had a big saucepan and then a sieve, and then a cheesecloth, and then I have put my acorn meal in the top, and then filled it with water, and then just change that every day. So take that water out, put fresh water in. So I haven't had the luxury of sitting there and doing it all in one day, but these are all methods that work. You basically need to expose your acorn somehow to water to to get rid of the tannins. So after you've got your sweet acorn meal, you can do what you like with it. This bowl here is the stage at which I have some frozen in the freezer, so it's just ready. It's got some water in it, and up there are a couple of acorn loaves. So I find with specialty flours that for trying to get people to get used to the flavor and to eating it, that I typically will mix, even if it's a rye or whatever it is, I'll do half and half. So those loaves are half acorn meal and half wheat flour. And whatever percentage you like, you can do it. You can make pancakes. You can make all sorts of things with it. But it's really just another nut. with tannins. So you just need to get those tannins out and you have another nut flour to work with that is gluten-free. Okay, so uh, it's become a mission for me to spread the word that we need to start eating the acorns again. Hence, eat the acorns. So this is actually me at the West Coast Culinary Symposium in 2023. We've got another one coming up in February. So here is that's the first time I taught that class at the SCA. So I had a bunch of nuts with me, and I just went through this whole process teaching about how to eat the acorns. And this actually includes a couple of different other ways that I try to spread the word about eating the acorns. So I have volunteered, as I mentioned, at the native site at the end of our road, and I have supplied hundreds of pounds of acorns to that program, but also probably taught thousands of students how to grind acorns. So there's a lot of students out there that have learned in third grade that it's okay to eat the acorns. Interestingly, some of the attendees, when I did teach the class at the West Coast Culinary Symposium, was like, oh my gosh, they lied to us in school. We can't eat the acorns. They told us we couldn't eat the acorns. So hopefully we will slowly work through some of these barriers and get the word out that we really can eat the acorns. So, my conclusion here, it's time to decolonize the acorns. It's time to destigmatize the acorns. It's time to unshame the acorns, and it's time to eat the acorns, put them back on the table, and give them their rightful place in our cuisine. And if you have any questions later, you can take down my email there, scfalpacas04@yahoo.com. Just okay. So one last little share here. There is an Ohlone restaurant. It only operates seasonally. It's now on the UC Berkeley campus, and usually they have a seasonal menu. But when they do their menu, they have always got acorn bread or acorn product on it. And this is the name of it, Mak Amham Cafe Olone. And that's some of my references there. And I'm going to go back to this one in case you want to write down my email. Okay, so any questions?